On the southern border of the United States of America, over 12,000 migrants from the impoverished nation of Haiti are there. It has created a major immigration crisis in the United States. The country is currently divided on the issue. What should the government of the United States do about this crisis on the southern border? Today, Carib Nation has assembled a group of students from the University of the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. to discuss this issue, to provide their perspectives, and to make recommendations on a way out of this current immigration crisis in the United States of America. I am Paul Nehru, Tennessee, a visiting assistant professor at the University of District of Columbia and a host on Carib Nation TV. Today we will be discussing the crisis on the southern border, specifically in regard to the Haitian migrants who are there, thousands of them, at Del Rio under the International Bridge. I have today with me students who study with me in political science, U.S. foreign policy, in homeland security, and in the administration of justice. We are here assembled today because there is a very serious problem, and they have been for some time now, but it has become very dramatic on the southern border of the United States of America. It has to do with immigration, but also it has to do with migrants, specifically from the Republic of Haiti. So I have with me here today Jessica Parker, I have Tracy Lucas, Jenna Scales Johnson, Flory Dakota, and Joel Roberts, who happen to be founder of the Migration Matters on the University of the District of Columbia's campus. Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to this program today. Now we will get immediately into it. You all have been listening to the news, looking at the various articles that have been written and comments that have been made, specifically and suddenly about the Haitian migrants on the southern border. We have been accustomed to seeing Mexicans and Central Americans from El Salvador and Guatemala and Venezuela arriving there. But suddenly, overnight, we were all surprised because in the past, Haitians came through Florida. Years ago, they were called the boat people. So I'd like to begin by asking each one of you to explain how you view what is happening at that border and what impact it had on you. So let's begin with Jessica Parker.
Well, first, I think it's very inhumane on how they're being treated. I believe they should be let into the US, especially with everything that is going on in their country. So they've been dealing with a lot of earthquakes and with the assassination of their president. So I believe they're coming to the US for structure because they no longer have that in their country. So that's the reason why they're fleeing.
Gina, what impacted you more as a difference when Hispanics come to the border, when Haitians are there? What impacted you?
Well, first, let me say good evening to all. What has impacted me the most in this is that when you see how they allowed other races come over to the U.S., find like people to accommodate, to help. And when you have Haitians come, it is, I don't know if it's because it's the darkness of their skin that they shouldn't come, or the beating. I actually have a brother-in-law who's Haitian. He has family who are in Haiti that he cannot contact or reach. So that's a personal thing for me. And I feel if we can bring other races over, we should be able to bring these individuals over, find like people, give them the help, the structure, the food, whatever it is that we need to do to help them make it to the next point. And I think as a country, we're not doing that. We are allowing them to be treated as like they treated slaves a long time ago, with whips, horses, stomping and sending them back to a country that has been corrupt of money that has been sent, but has not been used good for the people there.
Tracy, what is your perception of the Haitians on the southern border?
I believe that the Haitians have been dealing with a lot for a period of time, and the people in position over there have let them down. And as things begin to get worse with the earthquakes and the mudslides and things of that nature going on, I understand that there's a lot of crime and it's just inhumane. How can you say that a country who is doing far worse should not be allowed to come to a place for refuge? You know, if the Afghanistans were able to get put on a plane and immediately brought to the US and taken care of, why should Haitians, because of the color of their skin, we will not deny that, because they have been over there suffering, not just now, beforehand. And they're sitting at a bridge waiting for someone to help. And how can we let any human being just rot away and die? They don't have the basic things. What about the pandemic? You know, they don't have the vaccinations over there. They don't even have drinking water. So more diseases are going to develop. And we are, as the US, are saying that if you don't have something to offer this country, I don't believe they'll let you in. And they look at Black people as, well, people of color not having much to offer to this country. So they have a hard time receiving help. And it's unfortunate, because if everybody else can get in, we have the Hispanics and the Latinos who've come over here and thrived. They got businesses, they've got a fresh start, they've gotten benefits. And I just can't believe that once again, the color of our skin is hindering us from having a decent life.
Flori?
It's unbelievable.
Thank you. Florida Dakota, a student of U.S. foreign policy with me. How are you viewing the problem on the border currently?
I would say, hey, everybody's doing. Hope everybody's having a great night. I would say my opinion / the question is more so of how can we, what more can the United States do as well to help them out? To piggyback off of what was said earlier, the United States is actually working with the Haitian government to deliver 500,000 doses of Moderna to Haiti. And then in addition, since the 2010 earthquake, we've delivered $5.1 billion in assistance to support with reconstruction and development programs. And then in addition to the assassination of their president, the Department of Justice and Homeland Security have been actually investigating it with the Haitian government. And not only that, the United States, we've provided a loan for security and assistance for the Haitian National Police. We've helped with $312 million to make sure that the gang violence and various other things are curbed to the minimum. But even still with that, we can see the amount of economic and stability aid that we've given to them. There hasn't been an improvement, as we can see with the border crisis right now. So really the question for me is more so, what else can the United States physically do to help them? Besides, I mean, with global warming and the disasters with the hurricanes and stuff, there's nothing that we as a government can really do besides continuously still help them with medical supplies and things like that. So at the end of the day, it is very problematic. and we do need to do something. But the question is what exactly can we do more for the Haitian people?
Well, we'll get to that and we'll have a creative and constructive discussion as folks, all of you are Americans, and you as voters will have ideas about what we have to do, and we'll get to it. So, Joel Roberts, you're a founder of Migration Matters on the campus. Why did you found an organization about migration on the University of District of Columbia's campus?
Yes, thank you for having me, Professor. It's Joella, and I'm grateful to be here. I founded the Migration Matters because I was the only openly undocumented Black person on the entire campus. I also felt empowered through numerous student leadership positions and connections that I built with students to really stand up for myself and really stand up for other undocumented people on campus. I understood that students at large were being mistreated as customers and products of the institution. And I knew that there was more that UDC could be doing for us since we invest with our tuition, with our, mental contributions and all those things. But as undocumented people, we are already under surveillance and oppression of the government, local and national. And then so the assistance would come from our universities because we entrust that Migration Matters, of course, does not only service undocumented students. As of right now, one of our co-presidents is actually an international student because we understand that international students also don't have legal protection to speak out against their institution because they will get deported if they get kicked out of school, and speak out against the government because you're an international student. Like, why do you even have something to say is really how we view things. And so knowing that we are all people and that we all deserve, rights and we all deserve care and all of these things from our university, it really belted the need for Migration Matters on one of only 3 HBCUs that accept undocumented students to begin with.
How do you view the problem on the border with the Haitians?
Yes, thank you for asking me that. Honestly, I studied a lot of immigration. First and foremost, I had a job at a national immigration nonprofit. So I was at the forefront of information when it came to immigration, understanding all of the attacks and suffrage that we went through, knowing that what's happening currently is something that has been going on long before Trump. Even though Title 42 is a Trump enacted policy, immigrants have always been under attack in this country. When you look at the fact that the largest funded police budget for any police agency is actually ICE. And then you look adjacent to ICE is CBP. So, Haitian people
are for our audience, and what is ICE for our audience?
Oh, okay, thank you. I just, go with abbreviations. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and CBP is Customs and Border Patrol, and they have patrol still in their name in 2021. So when you see them on camera with what they claim is not whips, but whipping people with a sadistic smile on their face that is remnant of pictures during the times of slavery, you understand that this is the exact replicate of the American government and how they treat people who are poor, who are Black, who are all of these things. And Haitian people make up over 40% of families in detention centers. We know that our government, when you seek asylum, the first thing they do is lock you up. So they're literally, you go to the border and the first thing they do is put you in chains.
Did you just say that Haitians, 40% of people currently in detention?
Over 40% of families.
Independent of the people who have arrived at the border are of Haitian origin?
Yes. There's been a crisis at the border, Professor, and it's only exacerbated during the Trump administration with Title 42. But what they do is expel us and deport us. And so, yes, you see a lot of people at the border, but those are the ones who they didn't expel, who they did not put on a plane and just carry back to what, the country of origin after making all of that voyage. And so to me, I look at the crisis at the border that has long been a crisis as more so a replicate of what is happening globally. There's like an overflow. America has long been the cause of suffrage for Haiti. In fact, America was supposed to take collection from France, from Haiti. So like America has been taking from Haiti for centuries. So the little millions of dollars that they say that they're giving back does not undo the centuries of hurt and deprivation for that country. And so, yes, we look at Haiti and say, there's been an earthquake, and the president that the United States put in office got assassinated. But you have to look even further back and widen your lens even more to understand why Haiti is really going through what they're going through and why they have to flee their country to begin with.
Now, let's try and place the Haitian crisis on the border in a broader context in terms of what, for years now, we've been saying is a broken immigration system. What do people mean, especially members of Congress, senators and members of House of the media, that we have a broken immigration system? What, even before Trump, they have been saying that. What is the system in the US that has been broken? And what, in your views, you think should be done or can be done in order to fix, if for the lack of a better word, the immigration system in the US? How would you like it to see it? And what is which is the area you think is really broken? Let me start with Dakota. Dakota, how do you agree that the system is broken?
Yes, Professor, I do. Because one, it definitely, for people to come to the United States, it takes way too long. And I think it's like some people have to wait 10, 15 years. And there's a lot of Afghani people that even helped us during not just Afghanis, but everyone who's actually helped the United States has had to wait still 10 to 15 years. And especially for people in Afghanistan, they ended up being assassinated by the Taliban or ISIS. So it's a really broken system, knowing that especially people who contribute to the United States government are backstabbed by the own government themselves, and they can't get here sooner. So I think the key problem is how long it takes to get people into this country. I do think that's wrong. And then also how we handle immigrants at the border. Instead of turning them away, there's definitely a lot more we can do with that.
What is the view of your view, Tracy, about in general the immigration policy in the US and the laws? Do you believe there is need to get it fixed?
Yeah, I truly believe that, because it starts with here in the US. Once Black Americans here in the US are still fighting for justice. And so once they respect their own citizens that are Black, I think they will be more welcoming with ideas on how they can help these other countries, as far as Haiti, who have a population of people with color, more welcoming. Because you can't fix another situation if you're not fixing a situation at home. And if you look at here, Black people are still fighting for rights here. So it's just a broken system when it comes to me. It's about racism, because if you can allow another culture in that symbolizes more of a Caucasian, and then when the people who are darker skinned have to fight to get in, fight to have just the basic means of survival in life, that speaks in volumes that there's still a lot of racism in politics. And until people can acknowledge that and start changing the way they look at people and just look at them as humans, not the color of their skin, then we can be more open to deal with the issues globally. Because there's no way Haiti should have suffered this long, period. And the thing is that you have government officials who have duped out on them. They've run. So you can talk about all the money you sent over there, but where did the money go? Because if you look at the land, it's destroyed. So it doesn't look like a whole lot of economic building was going on over there. Might have been a whole lot of stealing, but not for the people. Because if that's the case, the people would still be able to thrive even after such devastations. And so they've only gotten worse. So I just think we need to start taking a look at how we treat darker skinned people globally, all over this world. We have been made to look like something we don't represent. And we are the most hardest working people. And we thrive to build this country and to build wherever we are. And we do it with open arms. But so much of us have been forgotten that they rather tear us down and watch us die than to help build us up so that we can take care of other countries and other people. But I say it starts in our own backyard. If you can look at us as human beings in America when our skin is darker, then I think you could be more open to helping other countries with darker skinned people, because that border has been opened up for Latinos, as I said, for Afghanistan people, because they favor more of a Caucasian look. But everything, Africa, Haiti, you look at all these places with dark-skinned people, they have been forgotten about and left to fend on their own devices. And when you're talking about gangs, you're talking about crimes, you're talking about people who are just desperate. And you have those over there who are taking advantage of this situation and hurting each other. And that's going on everywhere with the brown skin communities, because we just don't stand a fighting chance with this politics stuff.
Okay,
you know, everybody comes around numbers, but numbers don't mean anything.
Tracy, we'll get back to you. I know how you have very strong views and very good views. So, Gina, what's your take about placing the Haitian crisis on the border within the broader immigration problem of a broken system? What's your thoughts on those?
So my thoughts is that we need to bring those people here. We need to find a place for them, to be able to give them the comfort, to be able to give them what they need. I look at Haitian, as they said, the country is devastated. It's been devastated for years. Will it ever build back up? The money basically, in my outlook, is basically gone. You know, government has taken the money. They've used the money for something else, whether it's pocketed. You've got government officials here that I really feel in our country get kickbacks of making decisions on people because of the color of their skin or the country in which they come from. You know, my only prayer, Professor, for people of color is that they are treated, they receive the help that they need, and that as a country, we do what is actually right for once, that we give back.
Jessica, how do you place the Haitian problem in the context of a broken immigration system in the US that preceded this recent dramatic problem that has emerged on the southern border in specific regard to the Haitians? For some time now, we've been talking about this over the last number of years. What is your take? Do you believe we have to do something more about the immigration laws, immigration reform, and so forth?
Yes, I definitely believe that we need to improve our immigration laws and immigration reform, because to piggyback on pretty much what everyone said, that these people should not be able to, they shouldn't be treated like this, period. They're humans and their country is going through a crisis. So we do have the resources to help them. So we should use those resources and help them. Why do we have all these resources if we can't help countries that are struggling? So if we can help another country like Afghanistan get out of the situation they were in before the Taliban came and took over, then we should be able to help Haiti. You know, they went through a natural disaster, so we should be able to help them.
So, Joella, you have been looking and you've worked with a nonprofit organization dealing with migration, immigration, and so forth. Evidently, you're quite knowledgeable. So you are aware that you have heard that in the US there's a broken immigration system. If that system was comprehensively reformed, it might have averted some of the criticisms that have been leveled against the Biden administration currently on the border with regard to Haitians. Now, where do you believe this has to be fixed? How can we fix this broken immigration system?
First and foremost, I believe that this immigration system cannot be fixed and it has to be completely rebuilt. I also do not believe that it is broken. I believe that it's working exactly as white men, slave owners, people who make money off of people designed it to. From the first Immigration Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act, every legislation passed in the past like 2 decades have been negative when it comes to immigrants and immigration. And that is, of course, to continue classism, to continue racism, to continue all of the phobias and isms that exist in this world. Is even worse when it comes to immigration, because you don't have the protection of citizenship. And so to first fix the system, you have to understand that it's not broken and it's working exactly as it was intended. And you need a new system that actually cares for people, because the system that we have now is the same system that viewed Black people as 2/3 of a man. So how can a system or a country, synonymous, view Black people from abroad, and I think Tracy spoke to that, respectfully, when the Black people who are here make up over 60% of those encaged? We have the highest incarceration in the world. So of course, when immigrants come to the country, the first thing they think is, okay, encage them. So we have to acknowledge our historical mishaps and our ideologies living in like, oh, we are this utopian place of refuge, when in fact, we are the reasons that these people have to leave their home countries to begin with. That United States dollars, i.e. our tax dollars, i.e. our money, is being funded to obliterate those countries. And so yes, we obliterate those countries and then try to create contracts or try to prove that we're a refuge once the damage is done. I think that we need to move out of the savioral complex of what can we do for these immigrants and actually ask immigrants ourselves. What do we want? How can we help our countries of origins? And what are we doing? Because we've saved ourselves time and time again. When you look at Haiti being the first Black nation to emancipate themselves, Haiti didn't need no help getting free, clearly. But it's the bondage that is continually put on them is the problem. And so once we look at it from the victim mindset and not victor, because we are victimizing a country, then we can begin to have a just system or a humane relationship with Black people globally.
Well, it is true that if you look at the history of immigration in the US, it has been persistently and consistently discriminatory, but not only against for colored folks. In the early days, it was discriminatory against Southern Europeans. It was more Anglo-Saxon oriented. And even the Irish at one point were discriminated against. Europeans, even though they are in more ways than one, are the fathers and mothers of European or of racist theories, they have fought between themselves in 100 Years' Wars and 30 Years' Wars. So they don't only fight colored people, they also fight among themselves. But in the context of immigration and the evolution of immigration laws in America, I think you all are touching on something very fundamental. Dakota and Gina and us in US foreign policy, when we discussed that, I raised the point of whether US foreign policy should not be an extension of its domestic policy. And I think you all are making that point, that there is a kind of contradiction or inconsistency. You can't do abroad what you're not doing at home. I think that is a very important point that you all are making. Very interesting. So I want to move on now to ask each one of you, and I think, Joella, you raised that issue. We have a lot of immigrants, migrants coming from various parts of the world and immigrants. And we have a reality that currently, if you look at US immigration and you look at where the conflict is and where the problems are, it is very clear they're coming from Central America, Mexico and Central America, Venezuela, Haiti, right? We could say those are the four, and Cuba, right? Well, you all are aware, and you know, you all are aware that because Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution occurred and they declared themselves communists, that the US was very sympathetic to Cubans coming to the US. And there was a law that as long you were a Cuban and your foot touched the soil of the US, you got yourself a green card. And people used to criticize that and says, look how you're treating Haitians and look how you're treating Cubans. Haiti had a dictatorship, and we'll get to that, and that Cuba has a dictatorship. One is called communism, but the other one was fascism. So what's the difference in terms of the way the people suffer and the way the people need freedom and the way the people need to be embraced? So, you know, in life, we find a lot of contradictions, and that is why you all are students at this wonderful university. I've always encouraged you all to have the arguments for and against, right? So you always have to have a critical mind, and we always have to work towards the best. But I want to fill in a few points about Haiti because, you know, years ago, I did a Carib Nation TV program. You wouldn't believe it. Before 9/11, because I recognized that in America, people did not know what was Islam. And I dealt with Caribbean American Muslims, some, you know, with the Muslims in America, Muslims in the Caribbean, and Muslims around the world, but to explain the basic of Islam. And lo and behold, you wouldn't believe it. In that program, we spoke about bin Laden because we had identified him as a fundamentalist and so forth. And I think with Haiti also, I don't think the American public has a bit of background information. But for one, Haiti is a country where Black slaves overthrew one of the most powerful white governments in the world, France. France overthrew them and became independent on January 1st, 1804. Their heroes was Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines. The US did not recognize Haiti until 1862 because there was a degree of ambivalence, because remember at that time, America was half slave, half free. So the southern part of America, the ruling class there, they did not like that idea that slaves overthrew their masters and took over a country. That was terrifying for them. As a matter of fact, later they went to a civil war to make the whole of America a slave state. Now, people are not aware, but the French returned in 1825, and they demanded that Haiti pay France and the former slave owners in Haiti what would today could be calculated at $21 billion US dollars. Can you believe that? Haiti now was forced to borrow $30 million from French banks to make two payments on that loan. French banks. Can you believe that? That happened. In 1838, the president of France and the French government sent 12 warships to force the hands of the French president. Believe it or not, the Europeans, the English, and others did the same thing in Venezuela in the early part of the 20th century, where they blockaded Venezuela and forced President Castro, who was then in power, to pay the debts of a civil war that occurred in the middle of the 18th century to Europeans who claimed they had lost property. So it's a pattern. It was not only done with Haitians, it was done to Venezuelans. Now, it is incredible that you just became an independent nation and you have to pay the people from whom you had to fight for your liberation and the slave masters. When slavery was abolished in Guyana and the English-speaking Caribbean, Our former slaves were given £9. £9. At least they were given something, right? And they pooled their money together and bought up villages. Here, you have to compensate the slave masters. So why was France upset with this situation of the Haitian Revolution? Because France had a dream that they would like to have an empire in the Western Hemisphere. And Haiti broke that dream. Haiti broke that dream. And so they decided to sell their holdings in North America to the United States. And that is how we had the famous Louisiana Purchase. Now, do you know that Haiti was occupied by the United States between 1915 and 1934 in the 20th century? And you know who ruled Haiti? A gentleman by the name of Francois Duvalier, known as Papa Doc. And he had a repressive military and paramilitary forces called the Tonton Macoutes. I know personally, I was a student in Venezuela in 1968 and 69, families who fled from Haiti, who were virtually killed. We had a professor who is now deceased, Dr. Marie Racine, and she has always been a patriot. She's been 50 years at UDC. I used to teach Caribbean history, and she would accompany me to explain the Haitian Revolution in the classes I taught. She was very militant, like Joella is, regarding Haiti. I also want to point out that UDC has a connection with the great author of the book about the Haitian Revolution called Black Jacobins, C.L.R. James. Like Joella, like Stokely Carmichael, they are from Trinidad. And he was a professor at Howard University and UDC. And he wrote the book, Black Jacobins. And I'll advise all of you to read it. It's extremely interesting. When Duvalier finally died, his son became the ruler, and they called him Baby Doc. And he continued his father's rule from 57 to 71. And then there was a rebellion against him. And the United States Air Force took him to France to go into exile. And then, lo and behold, while he was in exile, the then government of Haiti tried to bring him back to try him for crimes against humanity and for corrupt stealing, but they could not extradite him from France. So France became the home for the dictator of Haiti and did not give solidarity to the people of Haiti in that respect. Anyhow, it is not only foreign interventions in Haiti, it's not only super exploitation, but Haiti has been a victim also of nature. Today we call it climate change, earthquake. In the 18th century, Port-au-Prince was totally destroyed. In 2010, there was a terrible earthquake. And in 2021, we had 2,200 people in an earthquake that died. And then in a previous time in Haitian history, the president was assassinated. But quite recently, the Haitian president, Jovenel Moïse, was assassinated. And after his assassination and the earthquake, it was two of the major push factors, because the country went in a kind of chaotic situation. And it's a push factor for people to leave the country. And that explains partly why they arrived so rapidly to the southern border instead of Florida, because they were already in Peru, in Panama, in Mexico and other countries in Central and South America. So it was easier to get to the border. I just wanted to provide that kind of information. Now I want to ask you all, what would you recommend to President Biden to deal with the problem, not only of the Haitians, but the immigration problem itself? How would you advise the American political system? Because there is no consensus on immigration. The Democrats and the Republicans are polarized. So how do you all see this evolving and how can it be addressed? Or would we always be having uh, a problem, a crisis on the border forever and ever? Because building a wall, one great political leader said, if you build a wall, people are going to build a ladder to climb over the wall, or they're going to go underground under the wall. They're going to find ways. Human beings are very creative. How do you all believe that politically that this could be resolved? Any of you could give me your opinion. What's your recommendation? What can be done?
I think we should
Professor,
start with
this is Gina.
Gina, go ahead.
I don't, my prayer is that it is resolved. I don't think it will be. Government presidents change every 4 to 8 years. People come in with different takes on things, different agendas. I don't think it could ever be solved. I wish they could come up with a system, a group of individuals who could look at humans as they are and make the right decision for people. I just don't think it would ever happen. When you're talking of government, government is corrupt. So I just don't see it happening.
Fleury, do you see any hope for any recommendation for us to move this immigration reform or reorganization, or, you know, like I usually tell you all, it's either we agree that the status quo is okay, it's either we want to modify it, or that we want to radically recall and replace.
So Professor,
do we recall and replace? Do we modify, or do we adapt with what we have?
I would say we'd have to modify and refine, because it's not just the policy that's broken. It's the American society, like you said, being polarized. It's something where we need to refine our own society and get away from the polarization, because the United States has become way more polarized each year and each presidency, resulting in our politics becoming extremely either left or right. And that, as well, is harming not just our own community, but our neighbors around us, such as Haiti and just everywhere. And that's the key issue. Is the polarization is going to keep affecting our neighbors, not just ourselves. And again, it's something that we as a society need to refine, and then we're going to be able to help out other people, because we can't help other people if our own society is either one way, like no immigrants at all, or, you know, we're going to let everybody in. And that's, you know, we kind of have to fix that, where we can come to a middle ground and agree to something. But in the United States currently, it's our society that's the problem.
Fleury is making a very, very important point. If you don't fix the polarization internally, you would not be able to address effectively not only immigration policies, but any policy about the economy, policy about any other.
I just wanted to say that running to the U.S., I don't believe is the political solution, because if we fix up the infrastructure in some of these other countries and build their economy, then the U.S. might be a place they just visit. But because we have fell short in these other countries, everybody thinks the U.S. is the ideal place to be. And unfortunately, they don't understand until they get here that that's not the answer either, because these people still have land that need to be taken care of. And if you look at how Haiti's homes were looking, where's the money? Where's the money? That it doesn't even look like they could withstand a thunderstorm, more or less an earthquake, the way their homes were built. So I think it's just
it looked a bit, Tracy, like what we saw under the bridge in Del Rio, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
It looked like that. It looked like that after the earthquakes. It looked like that. Tracy, you're making a very important point that complements what Dakota is saying. You can't only work because America is a superpower, the superpower in the world, because America is so powerful. You just can't only work internally, but at the same time, you have to work simultaneously abroad in terms of U.S. foreign policy, USAID's how the role of USAID in these countries to rethink how to provide aid and development to a lot of these countries. And America should have a straight policy, never ever to support any form of dictatorship, because dictatorship does not allow freedom for people to develop. You cannot develop in a dictatorship. That's why communism collapsed. They were all dictatorships. And the countries that have been developing are the countries that are free. So America need to be consistent on that and rethinking. But there are different times. American interest was defined very narrowly and in terms of businesses and business interests and so forth. So you're making a very important point. So Jessica,
Professor, I would also like to add the
go ahead. Somebody was saying something.
yes, I also wanted to add
Go ahead,
reparation
Joella.
into the conversation of like what we're owed globally. Because we make it seem like, you know, the United States can empower nations and give funding, when in reality, third world countries, which are actually just countries that did not opt into war, not poor countries, but they're used as synonyms. Third world countries actually have a lot of richness. Trinidad and Tobago has a pitch lake. We have natural resources. Africa is the richest land, but the poorest because of oppression. So I would actually contrast that and say, we don't need more putting our hands in. We actually need to just take our hands out and take our dictators out and allow folks to flourish, because you can't go to someone else's land and say, hey, you need a coconut tree right here. And they in the land know there's a goat that's going to eat the seeds. Like the tree is not even going to grow. But every year you keep putting seeds in this one place. In reality, if you were to say, hey, Haiti, we have a lump sum of money that we owed you because we oppressed you for centuries. What do you want to do with it? I'm sure they will flourish deeply. And, you know, the conversation around tourism, I love that point, Tracy. You're like, maybe they would just visit. The same ways Jamaica Kincaid wrote about, you know, tourism and the fact that, you know, for a lot of these countries, it's prison. Yes, it's a paradise to you. You can hop on an expensive plane ticket and go to these countries. But for the people who are actually from there, it is not, it is not a well-off experience. And so when we really value, like, we're not taking pity, because I think in a lot of what's going on with the immigrants in general, people are taking sympathy, and they don't need to take sympathy. My friend, I forgot her name, she said, we don't need to take sympathy, we need solidarity. I don't need you to feel sorry for Haiti. I don't need you to feel sorry for Black people. I don't need you to feel sorry for any people. You need to acknowledge us as human beings and as people. And I also lastly wanted to like negate the point around polarization. For instance, in 17, when President Trump was going to give people with DACA citizenship, he said he has to, you know, build a wall. And, you know, there seemed like a split between Democrats and Republicans, but in reality, they were pretty much on the same side. When you look at the trajectory of the ICE budget, when you look at the amount of deportation and expulsions, when you look at the police budget, when you look at minimum wage, nothing changes amongst party lines. And Gina brings up a great point of like, how much change can you really, like, how much innovation can you really bring if you're overturning the same 4 people every 4 years? Are we also in a dictatorship? Because Joe Biden was vice president just 4 years ago for 8 years. And he's coming in now doing the same things and saying, I don't know what to do. My hands are tied. If anyone knows government, it would be Joe Biden, who served in 2 out of 3 branches of the government. So we need to just like stop relying on politicians, in my opinion, to liberate us, because people like myself, I can't even vote. So party lines mean nothing for me. And really just like trust each other to empower ourselves and do the work that we need to do immediately, because people are at the border right now.
Well, Joella, Tracy, Flory, and Gina, and Jessica, thank you very much for being on the program. And that was a very interesting note. You all have brought up a lot of points. We have to deal with the internal challenges in the US to be more effective in dealing with our foreign policy and our role in other countries. You all have made very good points that it's not just, I like the point of Tracy too, that let's hope that one day Haiti could be developed and Central America could be developed and Venezuela and all the other countries, Cuba and these countries and Mexico, to the point where people only come to America as visitors. But I think Joella made a very interesting point. We also have to have a new thinking about global development. I used to be General Secretary of the Caribbean Workers' Council. I used to island hop 25 islands in the Caribbean, advising the labor unions. And most of them, from Bahamas to Curacao to Grenada to Barbados and Jamaica, they depending on tourism. And Joella is right. Even though the tourists will go to these countries and have a wonderful time and live in the best hotels and the best rooms, the reality outside of those hotels was a reality of despair, hopelessness, working for less than $2 and $3 a day. So it's not easy. So it seems to me I teach global political economy also. Globalization and the model that we have been using for global development, we have had technology bringing the world closer. We could send money from one end of the world to the other in 10 minutes, but human beings are not allowed to move from one country to the other in search of food, work, and freedom. So my friends, thank you very much for coming on board. I'm very proud of all of you as students studying with me. And this is an example at UDC how our students are alive, dynamic, and are up to date with the hot issues of our time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, I'm Paul New Tennessee for Carib Nation.